Good evening, everyone. This is Ashley from Random Ash, and tonight I'm going to be reading a scary story from the ghost story book, 13 Ghosts, Strange but True Stories. If you don't believe in ghosts, you're about to change your mind, by Will Osborne. And tonight I'm going to be reading The Ghost with the Bright Red Scarf. The young salesman was thrilled to see his sister, even though she had been dead for 9 years. He was sitting at a table in his hotel room in St. Joseph, Missouri, filling out the order forms from his morning's work. Bright sunlight shone through the window, and the young salesman was in a very happy mood. It had been a good day, and he was thinking about how pleased his boss would be when the home office received his list of new customers. He lit a fresh cigar and refilled his pen from the inkwell. Suddenly he was aware that he was no longer alone. There was someone sitting at the table to his right. Startled, the salesman turned and found himself looking into the kind eyes of his sister, Annie. "Annie!" the young man cried, leaping up to embrace her. But her pretty face was marred by something he had never seen before. On her cheek, just before her right eye, was a bright red scar. "I know it sounds crazy, Father, but I tell you, I saw her. She was sitting as close to me as you are right now, and I'm sure I could go to her trunk in the attic right now, Mother, and pick out her very dress she was wearing. I know it sounds impossible, but it's the absolute truth." The young salesman was sitting in the parlor of his parents' house in St. Louis. He had been so shaken by seeing his sister that he had cut his sales trip short and taken the next train home to tell his parents and his brother the story. At first they were all skeptical. "I think, son, that your mind must have been playing tricks on you," the young man's father said. "Perhaps there was something about the colors in the room or the kind of day it was outside that made you think vividly of her. Many things can suddenly stir the memory of someone you love." "But it wasn't a memory, Father. Annie was there, in the room, with me." The young man's father just smiled and nodded, and the salesman could tell he didn't believe the story. Perhaps he could have kept the incident to himself, but seeing his beloved sister again after all those years had left him with a feeling of peace and happiness, and he wanted to share that feeling with the other members of the family that loved her so much. How could he make them understand? "I know you don't believe me, but I know she was truly there," he said, "and she was just as beautiful as I remember her. The only thing different was the scar." The young man's mother looked up from her sewing. "The scar?" she said. "Oh yes, I forgot to tell you that. There was a scar on her cheek. It was more like a scratch actually, for it was a bright red, as if she had just scraped herself with a pin or something." Suddenly the young man's mother cried out in anguish and burst into tears. "Oh, my Annie!" she wailed, and still sobbing she told her family a secret she had kept from them for 9 long years. What happened the morning of her funeral, the old woman said through her tears. Annie was laid out in her casket, and I was all alone with her in the room. She looked so beautiful lying there, so still. The woman paused for a moment to dry her eyes, then went on. "But her hair. I always thought she looked so pretty when she wore her hair up, and I wanted to see her like that one more time. Just wanted to pin her hair up, but my hand was shaking so badly. When I went to do it, I scratched her face." The woman covered her eyes with her hands and wept. "I scratched her beautiful face and no one ever knew. I covered the scratch with powder and makeup before anyone saw," she said. But all through the funeral I thought about it, and I thought about it every day for the last 9 years. You couldn't have known about the scratch unless you really saw her, and unless she really did come to you. Oh, my Annie." The young man put his arms around his mother, and she cried for a while into the collar of his jacket as he stroked her gray hair. "It's all right, Mother," he said, looking over her shoulder at his father. "It's all right. She was happy, Mother. I could see it in her eyes. It's all right." A few weeks later, the young man's mother died. She had not been well, and had she died before the young man had told the story of seeing his sister, she would have taken the secret of the scratch on the girl's face with her to her grave. No one else in the world could have explained why the young salesman had seen the scar. But when the woman told her secret, Even her skeptical husband was convinced that her son had seen a ghost. For one fleeting moment in a hotel room in St. Joseph, the young salesman had truly been reunited with his beautiful sister Annie, the ghost with the bright red scar. The end. The case was reported to the American Society for Physical Research in 1887. Their files are full of incidents in which people claim to be visited by the ghosts of deceased family members, but usually there is nothing to suggest the ghost is anything more than a dream or an hallucination. The fact that the young salesman was unaware of the scratch on his sister's face at the time he claims to have seen her ghost sets this case apart and makes it particularly interesting to researchers.
Don't be scared. Like, subscribe, share.